I never believed in perfect marriages. You hear about them. People who claim they never fight, always love each other, and have some flawless understanding. But I always thought there was more to it than that. My wife, Julie, and I were different, though. We'd been together for 9 years. I was a software engineer from Seattle, and she was Julie. A visionary in her own right, constantly immersed in the evolving world of virtual reality. We were both ambitious, driven, and, at least I thought, completely in tune with each other. When she invited me to Los Angeles for her exhibition on the future of VR, I jumped at the chance. It wasn't just an exhibition. This was her moment, the culmination of years of hard work. She was the keynote speaker. I was just there for support, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't proud of her. The project she was showcasing was groundbreaking, and I had seen it develop from the ground up. We arrived at the exhibition hall early, and Julie was in her element. She was explaining the intricacies of the VR simulations to anyone who would listen. She had this way of talking that made even the most complicated ideas seem simple, captivating. As I stood there watching her, I felt a surge of love and admiration. Everything was perfect. We were perfect. I believed that, honestly. That was until I saw myself. Not exactly me, of course, but someone who looked just like me. A virtual projection of a man that was unmistakably me, same hair, same build, same eyes, but in a situation I could never have imagined. Julie was presenting a VR simulation to the guests, and in it, I saw a scene unfolding against the backdrop of the starry sky of Saturn. The scene was intimate, erotic even, and at first, I thought nothing of it. But then I saw her face. Julie. She was there, in the simulation, and there was no easy way to say it, to have intimacy with this version of me, or someone who looked exactly like me. I stood frozen for a moment. Surely this was some sort of technical error, a glitch in the system, right? But as I leaned in, trying to make sense of the projection, I heard something. Her voice. Julie's voice. A soft, familiar moan. My stomach dropped. I had to know what was going on. I couldn't just stand there. I had to find out what the hell I was watching. I excused myself from the crowd and made my way to the back of the studio. The area was mostly empty, save for a few technicians focused on the displays. My mind raced with questions. What was this? Why was Julie showing this to everyone? What did it mean that she was moaning like that, with me, but not me? I kept walking until I found something that I couldn't have expected, a secure database of VR scenarios. It was behind a locked door, but I had a feeling that I'd find something important here. I had to see more. Something inside me told me I needed to know everything. With a bit of effort, I accessed the system. It was a mess of files, most of them labeled with cryptic names, but one caught my eye. 01-July_Omega_Intense_Daniel_K_08 p.m. That name stuck with me like a curse. I didn't waste time. I downloaded it onto my pocket drive and made my way to a private room to examine it. What I saw would change everything. The screen flickered as the scene played, and I watched in complete disbelief as a full-fledged cheating scene unfolded before me, with interactive commentary from none other than Julie herself. She wasn't just a passive participant in this VR experience. She was speaking directly to the camera, describing everything in excruciating detail, the passion she felt, how free she felt with this other man. Daniel Crane. Her spiritual VR mentor. I was shaking, trying to process what was happening. But this wasn't just a fantasy. This was real. Julie was speaking about her experiences with this man, Daniel, as if they were true, as if she had lived them. To say that I felt sick to my stomach would be an understatement. I couldn't process what I was seeing. This was no glitch. No technical error. This was real. And that was only the beginning. I couldn't stop replaying the footage in my mind. It felt like my brain was stuck on loop, unable to escape the image of Julie in that simulation, with Daniel. The more I watched, the more certain I became. This wasn't just some virtual experiment. This was real. The words she spoke in the simulation were not just scripted dialogue. They were intimate, raw, and personal. She had described in vivid detail the sense of freedom she felt when she was with him. Julie, my wife, was sharing these intimate thoughts about another man, her spiritual mentor, as she called him. My hand shook as I watched the scene unfold again, but there was something else gnawing at me, something I couldn't ignore. This wasn't just a virtual experiment. It wasn't a conceptual creation. It felt like a direct confession, a peek into a part of her life that I had never known. As I tried to collect my thoughts, I felt a cold chill settle in my chest. It didn't make sense. Julie had never given me any reason to suspect that she was hiding something. We had always communicated openly, or at least I thought we did. We were partners. We built our lives together. I never once considered that there could be someone else lurking beneath the surface. She had never mentioned Daniel before. The name meant nothing to me. Until now. But as I sat there staring at the screen, my mind working to piece it all together, I realized something else. The date stamped on the file was no coincidence. 01_July_Omega_Intense_Daniel_K_08 p.m. That was the name of the scenario she had created, the one I had just seen, and the date rang a bell. I could feel my pulse quicken as I tried to connect the dots. I knew Julie well enough to remember little details that might help me understand what was going on. The date. It wasn't random. I remembered her mentioning a business trip to Los Angeles around that time, something about an industry event she had to attend alone. And I could recall her talking about a man named Daniel, though she had only ever referred to him as a colleague or a mentor. Nothing more. But now, seeing this footage, hearing her voice, it suddenly hit me. Those weren't just passing comments. Julie had been telling me about Daniel for months, but I hadn't really listened. Maybe I didn't want to listen. I felt like the ground beneath me was shifting, and I couldn't stand still. Something deep inside me clicked. The scenario was too specific, too real. I wasn't just watching a computer-generated experience. I was watching something she had lived through. Something personal. And then, like a punch to the gut, I remembered the receipts. The ones I found a few hours later in the hotel room where Julie and Daniel had stayed. It was the Orion Gate Hotel, and on the receipts were their names, Julie Lawson and Daniel Crane, listed together. The dates matched perfectly with the creation of the virtual simulation, and my stomach twisted as the implications hit me harder than I could have imagined. This wasn't some fantasy, some VR creation gone wrong. This was reality, my reality, staring me straight in the face. Julie wasn't just role-playing with Daniel in some simulated world. She had been with him, physically. The realization hit me with the weight of a sledgehammer. I sat in that room for what felt like hours, staring at the screen, not knowing what to do next. The quiet hum of the server room around me was the only sound, and it felt deafening. What had I missed? How could I have been so blind? The more I thought about it, the more everything started to line up. Those late nights when she was working late at the studio, the random trips she'd taken over the past year, the moments when she seemed distant or distracted. I had always brushed them off, thinking it was just the pressures of her career. She had always been ambitious, focused, driven. I admired that about her. But now, I wasn't so sure. Maybe she had been running from something. Or maybe she hadn't been running at all. Maybe I had been the one who was blind. The worst part? I couldn't even confront her yet. I was trapped, staring at the scene on the screen, unable to move, to speak, to make any sense of what I had just learned. Julie had been unfaithful, and I had just uncovered the evidence. The thought of facing her, of confronting her with this, made my stomach twist even more. What would I say? What would she say? Would she deny it? Would she admit it? Or was this just the beginning of something I couldn't even begin to comprehend? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed answers. And not just any answers, the answers. I had to know everything. And if Julie was hiding something from me, I was going to find it. No matter what it took. I spent the next few hours pacing, trying to come to terms with what I had seen, but my thoughts kept spiraling back to the same question. What now? The evidence was undeniable, and I couldn't just ignore it. Julie had been living a secret life that I had never imagined. The receipts were the final nail in the coffin. Daniel Crane wasn't just a fictional character in a VR simulation. He was real, and their connection wasn't something born out of the virtual world. It was something tangible, something she had hidden from me. I left the room, my mind still racing, and went to find Julie. I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't just let this fester. The thought of confronting her in front of everyone at the exhibition made my stomach churn, but I couldn't hold back anymore. I needed answers. As I moved through the hall, my mind went over all the conversations we'd had over the years, the things I had missed, the subtle signs that now seemed so obvious. I found her in a quiet corner of the exhibition, her eyes fixed on a projection as a small group of people gathered around her. She was still in her element, explaining the intricacies of the simulation to her guests, her voice calm and measured, as if nothing had changed. But I could see it in her eyes, the way she held herself, how she seemed so disconnected from me, even when she was standing right there. For a moment, I wondered if she had known I had discovered the truth. But how could she? I hadn't even spoken a word to her yet. "Julie," I said, my voice coming out more strained than I had intended. She turned to face me, a soft smile appearing on her face as she recognized me. "Hey, love. Everything okay?" she asked, her voice light, almost too light. It was the kind of tone she used when she was trying to be nonchalant, pretending like everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. I could feel the anger building inside of me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had to. I needed to understand the truth. "Can we talk? Private?" Her smile faltered, and she nodded, excusing herself from the small crowd. We moved to a secluded part of the studio, the distant hum of voices in the background doing nothing to quiet the storm raging in my head. As soon as we were out of earshot, I didn't hesitate. "Julie, who's Daniel Crane?" The words slipped out, sharp and direct, and I watched as her expression changed instantly. Her eyes widened, a brief flash of panic crossing her face before she masked it with a smile. "Daniel? He's a mentor, Travis. You know, someone I've worked with on the VR projects. He's helped me develop some of the more advanced scenarios." Why? The lie was so effortless, so rehearsed, that it made my blood run cold. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, threatening to spill over. "No, Julie. That's not what I mean. I'm talking about the scenario. The one with you and him." Her face went pale, and she took a step back, as if the words themselves had physically pushed her away. I didn't give her the chance to speak before I continued. "I saw it, Julie. The VR simulation. The one with the starry sky of Saturn. You and Daniel." The color drained from her face, and I could see the fight in her eyes, the struggle to keep her composure, to maintain control. But it was too late. I had already seen too much. "Travis," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice low but firm. "I know about the hotel. I know about the receipts. You and him, Julie. It wasn't just virtual. It was real." Her eyes flickered with something that looked like guilt, but she quickly masked it with a forced sigh. "I wasn't hiding anything from you, Travis," she said softly, but there was a defensive edge to her words. "It's complicated. It was never meant to hurt you. I never wanted you to find out like this." The air between us was thick with tension, but I couldn't back down. "Not now." "Complicated? You've been having a relationship with him, Julie, and you never told me." Her lips pressed into a tight line, and she shook her head. "It wasn't a relationship, Travis. It wasn't like that." "Then what was it?" I demanded, my voice rising despite myself. Julie seemed to deflate, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the situation was finally catching up with her. She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting mine with an expression that was hard to read. "It wasn't what you think. I needed to feel something different, Travis. Something real. Something beyond our life, beyond the work, the responsibilities, everything. Daniel gave me that." I stared at her, stunned, unable to process what she was saying. "You needed that? And you couldn't come to me? You couldn't talk to me?" She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze dropped to the floor, and I could see her hands trembling slightly. It was as if she was unraveling in front of me, and I had no idea how to fix it. "I thought it was just a fantasy at first," she said quietly. "But then it became more than that. I didn't know how to stop it. And I didn't know how to tell you." I swallowed hard, the hurt seeping in, but I wasn't ready to forgive her. "Not yet. Julie, you lied to me. You kept this secret from me, and now I have to live with it. With him." She shook her head, tears beginning to well in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Travis. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how to tell you the truth." The truth. The words seemed hollow now. The more I heard her explanation, the more it felt like she was making excuses. How had it come to this? How had everything we built become so easily shattered? The woman I thought I knew, my partner, my wife, was a stranger in this moment, and I wasn't sure who she was anymore. Before I could say anything else, she turned away, leaving me standing there in the silence, the weight of her confession pressing down on me. I didn't know what came next. All I knew was that I needed answers, and I wasn't going to stop until I had them. The days that followed felt like I was living in a haze, moving through the motions but never truly feeling like I was there. Julie's confession had shattered something in me, and no matter how much she tried to apologize, to explain, I couldn't shake the image of her with him. The realization that she had sought something outside of our marriage, something she felt was missing, made me question everything I thought I knew about us. Our relationship had always seemed solid, comfortable, even. We'd been together for 9 years. We shared everything, or so I thought. The trust one had in her, in us, was the bedrock of my life. And now, that bedrock was crumbling beneath me. The hardest part was the silence. Julie hadn't tried to speak to me after that conversation, except for a few half-hearted attempts to explain herself. I hadn't answered her calls, hadn't responded to her messages. I didn't know what to say to her, how to process the betrayal that now hung between us like a heavy cloud. I wanted to believe her when she said it wasn't what I thought, that it had been a momentary lapse in judgment, that it had been about finding something she felt she was missing. But every time I looked at her, I couldn't shake the image of her with Daniel. I couldn't forget the way she had described him in that simulation, the way she had talked about how free she felt with him, as if the connection we shared wasn't enough. I needed to understand. I needed to know more. And that's when I found the rest of the evidence. I had been trying to move on, trying to put some distance between us, but there was something pulling me back to the VR database. I couldn't stop myself. I had to know everything. It was a compulsion I couldn't fight, like a knot that tightened in my chest every time I thought about it. So, late one night, when Julie was away, I found myself back at the studio. I couldn't believe I was doing this. Couldn't believe I was digging deeper into something that was already tearing me apart, but I couldn't help myself. I couldn't let it go. I accessed the database again, this time without hesitation. The name of the file that caught my attention was even more cryptic than the last. 02_August_Daniel_05 PM_Omega_VR. I clicked on it without thinking. The screen flickered, and once again, Julie's voice filled the room. It was another simulation, another scenario, but this time it was different. The intimacy between Julie and Daniel was more pronounced, more intense, if such a thing could be measured. She spoke again, describing how she felt liberated by the connection with him, how she had never experienced anything like it before. Her voice was soft, seductive even, and I felt a sickening knot twist in my stomach as I listened. This wasn't just a one-time thing. It was a pattern, a deeper connection. And with each simulation I found, the same thing became painfully clear. Julie had developed a real bond with Daniel. These weren't just role-playing sessions or one-off experiments. These were moments she had shared with him, feelings she had expressed with him, and I had been kept in the dark the entire time. Each new scenario I uncovered felt like another layer of betrayal being peeled back, each one more personal, more intimate than the last. And with each discovery, the anger inside me grew. How long had this been going on? How long had I been blind to it? I couldn't even begin to piece together the timeline, but the more I looked at the files, the more it became clear that Daniel was no mere passing figure in her life. He was someone she had truly connected with, someone she had chosen over me in a way that I couldn't even fathom. But there was more. As I dug deeper, I found something else, something that made my heart drop to the pit of my stomach. The files weren't the only things I had stumbled upon. Hidden among the data were a series of emails, messages between Julie and Daniel, some from the earliest days of their interactions. The tone of those early conversations seemed innocent enough, professional, discussing VR simulations, nothing too personal, but as I read further, the lines began to blur. The messages became more frequent, more personal. They began to reveal a growing attachment, a connection that went beyond the professional. I traced their exchanges, their discussions of future projects, and realized that there were moments where Julie had poured her heart out to Daniel, confided in him in ways she hadn't with me. She had sought his guidance, his support, his companionship. And somehow, in the quiet corners of our marriage, she had built a bond with him that I could never have seen coming. It all clicked into place. The trips to the studio, the late-night meetings, the little things she had said in passing. Daniel was a constant presence in her life, and I had been blind to it. He had infiltrated her world in ways I hadn't even realized. And as much as I wanted to turn a blind eye to it all, the truth was undeniable now. Julie and Daniel had crossed a line. More than that, they had built something together that I wasn't a part of. She had kept it hidden from me for so long, and I couldn't help but wonder how much longer it would have gone on if I hadn't found out. I sat there for what felt like hours, my hands trembling as I scrolled through the files, the emails, the recordings. The weight of everything I had just uncovered settled on my shoulders, and I felt like I was suffocating. I had to confront her again. I had to face her with the truth, even though I knew it would only break me further. There was no going back. I had seen everything, and now I couldn't unsee it. As I closed the laptop and stood up, the door to the studio creaked open. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. Julie was standing there, her expression unreadable, but the look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She knew. She knew I had found the truth. And now, the real confrontation was about to begin. Julie didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, her gaze locked on mine as I closed the laptop with a snap. The silence between us was thick, suffocating. For a moment, I almost wished I hadn't found everything I had. Maybe I could have walked away, pretended that I hadn't uncovered the truth, that the things I had seen weren't real. But I couldn't unsee them. The files, the emails, the videos, everything had been laid bare in front of me, and there was no going back. I couldn't pretend anymore. "Travis," she said, her voice soft but strained, as if she was struggling to find the right words. "I'm sorry. I didn't want you to find out like this. I never wanted to hurt you." I couldn't even look at her. The words she spoke were too little, too late. All I could hear in my head were the things she had said in those recordings, the way she had described how she felt with Daniel, how she had found something with him that I had never been able to give her. All the promises we had made to each other, all the years we had spent building this life together, felt like they were slipping away. In their place was a cold, sharp reality that I couldn't ignore. "You didn't want me to find out?" I asked, the bitterness in my voice surprising even me. I turned to face her, my eyes hard. "You think this is something you could just hide forever, Julie? You think I wouldn't notice?" Her face fell, and I could see the guilt written all over her. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought it was just a phase, something that wouldn't matter. But it did matter, Travis. It mattered more than anything I've ever felt. And I just didn't know how to stop it." I shook my head, disbelief and anger mixing in a way that left me feeling dizzy. "How could you not know how to stop it? You're talking about building a life with someone else behind my back. A life I had no part in. And now you're telling me you didn't know how to stop?" Her eyes welled up with tears, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy. "I didn't want to hurt you," she repeated, her voice breaking now. "I thought I could manage it all, but it got out of control. And I never wanted to tell you because I didn't want to lose you." I stepped back, suddenly feeling like the floor beneath me was unstable. "You already lost me, Julie. You just didn't see it until now." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but it didn't help. I felt like I was drowning, and no matter how much I fought, I couldn't find solid ground. The woman I had loved for so long, the one I had built a life with, had betrayed me in a way that I couldn't even begin to understand. The reality of what she had done was too much to take in, and yet, here she was, standing in front of me, crying, pleading for forgiveness. But I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I said quietly, the words feeling heavy on my tongue. "I don't know if we can come back from this. You broke something, Julie. You broke what we had." She reached out, her hand trembling as she tried to touch me, but I stepped back instinctively. The distance between us had grown too wide, too deep to bridge with a simple apology. "Please, Travis. I'll do anything. I'll fix this. I swear I'll fix it." Her voice was desperate, but I couldn't respond to her plea. I couldn't let myself. The woman who had been my partner, my best friend, had taken a part of me that I didn't think could be taken. Trust. Once that was gone, what else was left? I turned away from her then, not because I didn't still care, but because I didn't know what else to do. The weight of everything I had uncovered was crushing, and I had no idea where to go from here. "I can't fix this," I muttered, mostly to myself. "I can't pretend it didn't happen." Julie's sobs filled the air as I walked away. I didn't turn back, though I wanted to. I wanted to hold her, to tell her everything would be okay, but I couldn't lie to myself anymore. It was over. I left the studio, my heart heavy, but something else inside me felt like it had shifted, like the world I had known had been shattered, and there was no way to put it back together again. The city lights blurred as I made my way to the car, and I knew that leaving wasn't going to make the pain go away. It wasn't going to make the betrayal any easier to bear. But it was the only thing I could do. As I drove through the streets of Los Angeles, my mind still reeling from everything I had uncovered, I received a message. It was from Clarice Bennett, the environmental designer who worked at the same studio. The message was simple, and it was almost too casual to be serious. "You should know that this is not our first scene," she wrote. "There are 5 more. And one of them was me." The world around me seemed to freeze as I read those words. It felt like everything had just come to a head, like I had just uncovered another layer of something I wasn't sure I could bear. But in that moment, I realized there was no going back. I was leaving the city, leaving everything behind, but before I did, I decided to record one last projection, a final act of closure for myself. I stood in a corridor, facing the camera, and removed my wedding ring. I placed it on a black surface in front of me, the cool metal reflecting the harsh light. Then, I spoke, my voice steady and clear, though it was heavy with something I couldn't describe. "The future is only real when the past is completely erased." And with that, I turned away.